Ms. Boucher, would you please read the next item on today's agenda?
Misdemeanors versus municipal civil infractions.
Matt and John Stern, letter.
Yes, so John Stair was not able to be here today, but he did put forth a letter and his thoughts on it. Back up a little bit, we have been having the conversation off and on for about a year now on what is the most appropriate way to handle violations of local ordinances. Traditionally, we have kept these as misdemeanors. That is a criminal offense though, whereas we were talking about perhaps moving to a municipal civil infraction, which is a lesser charge. It's a violation of a local ordinance. It's not considered to be a criminal offense. So you don't end up with a criminal record based on violation of local ordinances. So for our discussions today, we've included the items that you guys have a letter from Mr. Starin giving his thoughts, background on the topic area as well. We're also looking to some of the discussion topics today, civil infractions, how they are beneficial to code enforcement concerns, the there's A through E. But again, these are infractions prohibited by ordinance. Not a crime, but it's a penalty and sanction, maybe ordered by the court. So we still are able to get remediation from the courts through this process. It's not something that we lose out in relation to the misdemeanors. The ordinance would specify that these items, whatever the violation is, are specifically specified as a municipal civil infraction, whereas now they're defaulted to misdemeanors. And then possess and prosecute similar to traffic and parking violations. So there's a precedent there for the course. There's precedent there for the work that Chris would have to do as our prosecutor. And then alleged violators scheduled for pretrial conference trial and determined a jury trial. We would have a couple of, we have the ability to intercede by pretrial. And so if we still, writing a ticket doesn't have to be the end of the violation or it doesn't have to be the end of our portion of it. We can still tell them, listen, if you get this cleaned up by pretrial, you can meet with the prosecutor, we can get this charge dropped, and you don't have to go to court. You don't take a day off, you don't have to do, there's a lot of things here that you don't have to do. So there's not necessarily a loss for timing. The goal is now, always, and forever will be to actually get the issue remedied. And so if somebody is found guilty of whether it's misdemeanor or a MCI, they're going to have to pay some amount of money to the courts. We'll get a portion of that certainly, but it's money that doesn't go into to fixing whatever the violation happens to be in this scenario. And so this is all I think taken from John's letter here. When we look at fines and remediations. So a person found guilty, they can be sentenced up to a fine not to exceed $500. Courts may issue orders and injunctions necessity to help us basically go in and address whatever the issue happens to be. But you could somebody could end up still with injunctions or jail time for something like this. Default judgment entered into against those who don't appear at hearings. I think this is on misdemeanors, correct, Matt?
No, actually, what the courts have started doing is for civil infractions, they'll be held in contempt, and that way a warrant can be issued.
Okay.
So, but misdemeanors also, but.
Yeah, I knew that for misdemeanors, but I didn't know if that had been extended to NCIs as well. So again, we're the two parallel each other in that regard. And again, failure to answer or notice, even if we write for a municipal civil infraction, if you fail to respond to it at all, you still hold the option of escalating if it need be to a misdemeanor. So actually ignoring a municipal civil infraction is in itself a crime. But even if we don't start at that point with violators. Likewise, if they don't pay the fines, the lien, you still get a lien against the property when it's sold. And then we can also sue to collect some of those fines and costs. In most, I would like to hear, I didn't get a chance to follow up with John at that point. I don't know how much it would cost us to sue somebody for whatever the fine ends up being on a municipal civil infraction. I don't know how often we would have that, but it's there and available to us. If we have a property owner who has multiple violations, who continues to attribute or who continues to collect these fines over a period of time, then we have the ability to sue to recoup all those lost costs that were associated with prosecuting the violation. There questions on this particular item? I know I'm no John Starren.
Go ahead, Jack.
Do we have to go through this and redo all of our ordinances and put that in, so we have to change every ordinance we've got on the books then?
Everywhere where it's referenced as a municipal civil, or as a misdemeanor,
So
we
we
have
would have to
to.
change that too. So we got a lot of,
There are,
Paperwork.
I know there are some sections that just say everything, a violation of this in all regards is a misdemeanor. So there would be sections of the ordinance where we would just do the violations portion, but it will likely show, that verbiage shows up
just
several
can't
times. in
make
the
another ordinance that says all these are changed to,
That might be our near term, to
Okay.
get it done that way.
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, I mean, there's the intention and then there's the details, right? So if we have the intent of making this kind of a shift, then we could set as a policy, here's the general guidance and here's what we intend to do. And then certainly trust to the professionals to go through the details and make sure, we do all the right, locations for the language and all that kind of stuff. So, certainly it all needs to come back to us, we need to review it very carefully, but I think in terms of a procedural action, if we were to explore something like this, or move forward with it, making the intent clear, I think would help provide clear guidance to make sure that the implementation is smooth. Right? I mean, there's a lot of whole stuff, but maybe we could go through as a bundle or something like that and just say, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We could figure out a way to get it done, after we figure out if this is the direction that we want to go.
Yeah.
I just did a quick search of misdemeanors on our ordinances. I got 47 results, so it's not as overwhelming as I actually thought it was going to be. And some of those may be, from traffic code and other things that we choose to keep as misdemeanors. They're health, safety, welfare related.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good distinction, because, and John makes it sort of at the end here of his letter as well. I think there's certainly some that probably would be worthwhile if kept as misdemeanors.
Yeah.
But generally, my own personal opinion, in situations like this, I would tend to probably favor knocking it down to a civil infraction. It's funny, we were actually reviewing an application that we have for an open position in our office. The actual application itself, not somebody's, but certainly something you have to label on there is whether you've been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony. And it just, I would hate the thought of having a situation like this violating maybe an ordinance that is, like John indicates in here, a zoning code, whatever it is, that might weed somebody out from potential employment just because they had since been convicted of a misdemeanor. And that's it. So that's just a more personal aside, something that kind of came up as I was reviewing this. But yeah, I think generally I would probably favor personally changing this a little bit with the caveat of keeping some of the ones that are a little bit more intensive.
What does the rest of council think, and chief, how this may impact you guys as well? Feedback, let's first talk, at least on this side. Is anybody seriously opposed to moving from misdemeanor to civil infraction, or vice versa? Dennis?
Yeah, I'm inclined towards moving more things towards infractions, civil infractions. I think it gives us more tools, and I think where people might be hesitant to go after someone doing something wrong, if it's going to end up in a criminal record, we may be more apt to take the steps to correct that if it's, the penalties aren't so severe.
Okay. Bridget?
I agree with what's been said so far, really, Steve, Ross, and Dennis. I think that moving toward misdemeanors, civil infractions is the way to go.
Okay.
I agree. Just, there are some cases where we're going to see repeats of this, as long as we have the ability to get harsher penalties, it just keeps going on.
Right.
Then we can't, I'm against it, but if we can go to a misdemeanor so we can get some action on it for repeat violations, I agree with it.
One of my questions was, can repeat offenses escalate from infractions into a misdemeanor?
Yes, I'd say,
And I would absolutely want that.
I agree. I think we should go ahead.
What was John's opinion? Did you have an opinion on that?
John is overall favorable to have local ordinances come under municipal civil infractions. I wanted him and Dan Chris to do point counterpoint, because Dan Chris favors misdemeanors for these things. I think given his prosecutor, his work as a prosecutor, I think certainly plays into that. But they said, John has said for years, he and Dan have had a running debate on the two items.
And neither one ever showed up to prove their point.
Right.
Was that a misdemeanor or a civil?
If they don't show up twice, we'll escalate.
I tend to agree with my peers right now that I think having everything as a misdemeanor, especially some of the less egregious things that we're talking about here, having those as civil infractions first, I think makes a lot of sense. Providing, like Jack mentioned, if it continues to be ignored because it's just a civil infraction, who cares, that we can escalate that to a misdemeanor and have that ability if we need to. I think that makes a lot of sense for some of the reasons that Ross mentioned early on. I agree with that, slapping somebody with a misdemeanor for something that may or may not necessarily reflect true criminal intent or activity. I'm not big on labeling people who don't necessarily deserve to be labeled. If they deserve it, no problems with that. Chief, what about from your side? I mean, what are the potential impacts or?
I don't see any impact at all, because typically we don't do so. I
Right.
will, from enforcement standpoint, the goal is compliance.
Right.
So if this works for compliance, that's great. And there are, what they've, like for instance, if you get a careless driving ticket, which is a civil infraction, and you don't show up, the court can issue a civil warrant for contempt. So you're still subject to arrest. And we will, I have not seen one here, but at times there'll be warrants for arrest that we will actually go and arrest them for. Procedurally, a civil infraction like a misdemeanor, if you want to fight it, you go to court just like you do so procedurally it's pretty much the same thing. So from our standpoint, I talked to our 3 lieutenants too, and we don't see any issues at all.
Okay, excellent.
So now, after discussing the desire to move to a civil infraction, John points out in his letter that we do have the ability then to move to a municipal ordinance violations bureau. And John does a couple of paragraphs in his letter on how that would roll out. It's captured here in the bullet points. So we would be bearing the expense to create an operative bureau for all courts and fines. If we opt not to, then we would default still to the 44th District Court to handle these items. And the city does have a revenue sharing agreement with them. We're not in a situation where we would lose either effectiveness of our enforcement or any kind of monetary agreement with Royal Court. So, but it would just be the question of, do we want to handle these wholly in-house? We go back to turning the council chambers into a courtroom again, or do we want to continue to allow 44th to handle these on our behalf?
Thoughts, Jack?
The question is, what is the expense to us to create the bureau of the court again? Somebody's got to run it, somebody's got to keep track of all this,
Right.
there's got to be clerical work,
And for, again, and what the revenue picture is there, the two don't seem to match up. My administrative recommendation would be to continue to allow 44th to handle these items.
I don't see why we couldn't.
Yeah, agreed. I'd like to keep things simple and clear and focused and without as many exceptions and rigmaroles as possible. And so we have a well-established partnership with the 44th, and I think just continuing that and makes the most sense.
I feel like we're trying to add slightly less confusing or less bureaucracy here. We don't want to add in a whole other layer of it. That seems pretty counterintuitive
Yeah.
for this.
But John did want to make sure that everyone's aware that it opens up an option for us if we so choose.
It's good to know, for sure.
Yeah.
But at a later date, we could change back to that if we
Always.
wanted to.
Yes, we could always end up establishing this at a later date.
You're your own judge. Dennis?
Yeah.
I'll make Dan Chris
I'm-
judge one way or the other.
Ooh, that's on camera too. He's doing that.
Yeah, I think leaving it with the courts is the right thing. I definitely to start, and could revisit this later. I don't know if there's any, I guess I want to say customer service aspect, where if it's more convenient for them if it's in the city instead of Royal Oak, that would be the only reason I would consider it. But I don't think that's overriding enough to change. Maybe let's make it a little inconvenient.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Additional comments on our two options here? Seems as though, I think I have a pretty clear sense, and Matt, I think you do too, which way the council at least is leaning on those two items.
Okay. Then the next step would be the implementation itself, which, as we talked about before, we'll go through a process of identifying what makes sense to move off of misdemeanor and onto under the heading of municipal civil infraction. John gave some items here, and we have some bulleted here as well about what those could be. So we would try to bring them to you likely in a batch, as many as possible at any given time and under specific headings. And so that to make sure that what we're doing is in line with what the city council is thinking as well. So that's under next steps, I guess.
Just a timing question, if we were to proceed with this, it feels as though at least we have some clarity towards that. What kind of a time frame would we be talking about? Is this like a January, February, March kind of thing, or does this take a really long time and we won't see this till next fall? Any inclination of if we give the green light, then what kind of timing we're talking about?
I would say the timeline would be more likely to be end of the budget year than first quarter of 2019. So we're likely looking somewhere after we get the bulk of our budget work done, and then we'll be able to move on to that.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Just one implementation detail. Is it, I would be in favor of if there is a violation that each day there is a violation that can, it is a separate violation. And I think that gives some more teeth towards the getting it resolved quickly. If they have violations that are piling up every day, rather than just one violation that, covers a longer span of time.
Do we do that today? Is it one misdemeanor every day that kind of piles up? I guess the concept made sense to me about shifting something from a penalty level X to penalty level Y. But I wasn't sure about like the frequency of the issuance of those penalties. If that's another thing that we need to talk about, then that's probably.
I'm not sure if we're prohibited from doing it now, but it's not been our practice.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and
So what is the time frame then? It was once and then wait till it can settle in court, and then if they do it again, then another one.
Correct.
And my goal is not to rack up fines, it's to get to compliance. And I think there could be some discretion if we know they are working towards the solution. We don't continually hit them with it every day, but if someone is being obstinate and, no, I don't care, then, we use that tool. It gives code enforcement more tools to work with.
Isn't there a time frame within which you have to respond if you get a code violation? You have 24 hours or 48 hours to rectify the situation, or is there currently?
Yes, yeah, we give a lead time after initial.
So the citation's written or notice or whatever.
Yeah, so we start with notice of violation.
Okay.
With redemption period, and then when they fail to redeem, we do typically give them, we really mean it, this is the last chance to get it done before moving the citation.
No. What's the time frame within which, when you first issue that violation, how long do they have to correct? the situation.
It does go by the type of violation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess to your point, I wouldn't throw something else on unless it exceeded the time allotted in our current, the way it's currently written. What I am not in favor of, okay, we really mean it now, because I think it sends the wrong message. If you want this, if you're writing this violation and you want it corrected, it's like telling your kids, well, it's just sending the wrong message. So, in my opinion, so I would make that change, leaving a time frame within which someone can respond and take corrective action.
And I don't know how Tim feels about it, but I would say since you're not, writing a criminal ticket, and this, we would be able to utilize it more quickly because if we have said, first notice, second notice, final notice, we're trying to put off having their issue, a misdemeanor to somebody. So this does give us the ability to shorten that time.
You can be more nimble.
Yes.
Okay.
And plus, we know that the misdemeanor is a potential option in some of those as a ultimate, this is, you're in trouble now kind of thing, right? So if we are able to shorten the number of chances we give them before we put the misdemeanor on the table, I think that's, then we have both ends covered, right? Get it fixed, or to get this thing, if you don't get it done by there, then boom, we get to meet misdemeanor. A couple of you got that.
Yeah.
The rest of you are really good.
Okay, I think that's a good point to discuss whether it's a daily thing or it's a 48-hour thing or it's a weekly thing. I think we do need to make sure because it does just go. My worry is that it's just a civil infraction now. It's not as pressing. I'm going to let this thing slide. And our goal is not to create fines; it's to get to compliance, which is what we've said. So whatever is going to be the impetus to drive folks to do that. Whether it's a first, second, third, well, if we don't know, it is going to be a misdemeanor, and we've given you the opportunity, then I feel like we've done our job to try not to impose too harsh of a penalty, giving you opportunities, refuse to take action. Sorry, it is what it is at this point. Great. Everybody on board? Okay. Yep, go ahead.
And sometimes there will be hardships where someone may, they just may not have the money to do it. So we can also try and identify that and direct those people towards resources. I know there are resources out there where people can't help. So, if we can, try and direct them. And I know sometimes the city does do that and the person refuses the help. And so in that case, you've got to go after them. But, also, there is some discretion here and if people need help, get them to the help they need.
Correct.
Yeah, that's, again, what it would, as Matt said earlier, the goal is always just to get whatever the violation is remediated. So if that's what helps, that's where we actually put that in front of somebody.
All right, I think we're good on misdemeanors versus civil infractions. Can we move on with, on our speaker here, can we get through the Derek and Matt portion of it, or are we stuck? Yeah. All right, so we'll start that. So